Hi everybody and welcome back to Cozy Cards and Crystals. My name is Joanna and today it's time for another episode of Card Change, a video series here on my channel where it's all about deck modding and not your average deck modding like etching or cutting the borders off, but a little bit more extreme. In this video series, I will share with you guys my modding practice, especially with the decks that I really love, but for one reason or another, and that is a specific reason for each of the decks, they don't work for me, or they make it harder for me to use them, or I'm not really excited to use them, and I really know what that reason is, and that I can change that through a mod. I've already showed you some examples where I already did these mods, but I showed you the finished result and explained a little bit more about why I did that. The first episode of this video series, I will have a link to the playlist below. And today is the first episode where I actually finished a mod here on camera to a deck, and you can already see it. It's the Spirit Speak Tarot deck. This is a black and white deck. And black and white decks aren't usually decks that I'm really drawn to. They often feel like, at least for me, they're missing something. They feel boring. They don't really feel like they're alive and vibrant and vivid. As I said, there are some exceptions to the rule, and but this isn't one. I got it because I really love her unique illustration styles. I really love her Vessel Oracle as well. And I especially with this deck love a lot of the depictions, the symbols she decided to put into the different cards and how she decided to depict the different cards that are still easy to recognize what the cards are and make sense to the meaning of the cards, but they're often deviating a little bit from what you're usually seeing. And I love those deviations or changes. But I'm not really excited to getting it out, and every time I got it out and looked at it, I was like, oh, I really love how she depicted the Hierophant, for example, is one of my favorite Hierophants. I also showed it in the Top Tarot Drums video where I showed my favorite Hierophant cards. And it is an unusual depiction, but I really love it and it makes sense. Um, the moon also a little bit unusual. The emperor also a little bit unusual, and also one of my favorite emperors that I also showed and talked about in the Top Tarot Drums video. But it doesn't feel alive enough or vibrant enough or exciting enough to choose it quite often because of that missing colors. And so I decided to put my own colors on here. And so I already started with these cards right here. And I colored just a few things and not the complete image, but just a few things. And the way I did that was I went through every card and first of all looked at one or two symbols or specific things on that imagery, on the depiction that I really wanted to highlight, that really felt important to me, that stood out for me, that really spoke to me, or that highlighted a specific fact in terms of the meaning of the card. And therefore, I really wanted to highlight those little details or things by adding in the color to these specific things. So it still primarily will be, after the mod is done, primarily a black and white deck, but it just has some highlights or some spots of color that make it more exciting for me and make it more alive and awake for me, if that makes sense for you. This one, I hadn't enough patience, and by trying to see, to rub above the color to see if it was already dry, this happened. And so I have to live with that, but this is the only color that this happened with. So if you're doing these mods, especially in these more extreme kind of style, you will have to be completely clear and good about that sometimes it can turn out to be more chaotic or not as perfect as you thought it would be, and you really have to deal with that in the forefront and be clear about if that is something when it happens that you're okay with, or if you can't deal with it at all, then just don't do it. And so the markers I use, or I have already used, are these Pro markers by Winsor and Newton. They have two sides to them. One is more like a finer point, and the other side is more like a chisel tip. And they're pretty good for also etching, but also for different things. For this instance, I mostly use the finer point because there are smaller little details that I want to be able to fill in or fill out. Also, another tip that I want to share with you guys, always try your markers first before doing an actual mod on the actual cardstock that the deck you want to mod is, so that you can actually see if it will hold up on the card, and if it is even able to dry on that specific cardstock, because some markers don't necessarily hold up and they won't dry at all on specific cardstocks. So always make sure if there is an extra card on there or a title card or an advertising card within the deck, always try the marker that you want to use on that card. Alright, so let's start right here with the Hierophant. With the Hierophant, for me, the most important thing on this card, and the reason why I love this card so much, is also the most unusual thing, and that is the cactus. And so I wanted to highlight the cactus in green, and the metallic green that was in the metallic pack was more like a teal color, and so that didn't work. But I also have a green right here, and so I will put this one on the Hierophant card. Let's see how that goes. Also the first time for me to color these cards in front of the camera, so I will have to work around my tripod, my camera stand, and my phone. So I'm not sure how that will work out or hinder me in my ability to move freely and see clearly. So let's see how that goes. It could be a total mess. And so the first thing that I have noticed is the metallic markers were a lot more saturated and darker. And so when I used the metallic markers, I really needed to fill out only the spaces in between the lines. Because if I filled out these cards the way that I do it right now, the color of the markers would completely cover up the black and white or the black lines. And so in order to don't cover up the black lines, I would have to work within these lines or work around these. With these, they're so light that I can completely work over them and you're still able to see the black lines. But at the same time, you really have to pull 2 or 3 coats in order for you to be able to see the color actually. So there it is. That was the cactus. So now I have to lay the card out and make really sure that nothing falls on it or that I can't get on the surface of it, because then I will have a smeary image. And these markers need a long time to really be dry, and not only dry on the surface level but also in the lower levels. So I will have to lay these out overnight. At least that was the amount of time that the metallic markers really needed. So with Temperance, I really wanted to highlight, let's focus camera, the water and the fire, so that you can easily see the two opposing forces. So let's do that. So already our blue here at hand. And you can see that these aren't really perfectly inside the line. Some are a little bit more shifted. But it is also the case with the metallic markers, and I actually like it because this deck is more sketchy and not as perfect, so that really fits the line work as well. And there you have your color. So now I will stop rambling and just do it on camera, at least a few more cards, and then I will be back with the results. So here we are with all of the cards that I did so far. Just a little overview. I've laid them out here to dry. And then another thing happened during coloring in is that the pink all of a sudden was really something with the liquid was wrong, and so it turned out to look like this. And so when this happens, just let it dry a little bit so that the layer of the actual color that you want is a little bit dried so that you don't smear everything when you're doing it. And there where it collected to these droplets, then you can go and put and take something like this and just let it soak up. And you can see I'm not smearing it or pushing it, I'm just slightly tipping onto it so that it can soak the liquid. And if you are smearing, just a little bit to the side where the actual color is. And then it looks like this, and now you can start to smear a little and rub a little bit more. And now it almost looks like this has never happened. So that is a little when something goes wrong, what you can do on there. And you can see I'm not perfect, I'm not an expert, I make mistakes all of the time, but I'm fine with that. Let's see the before and after to close this video off and show you guys how it looked before and then after the mod.